When my daughter told me I wasn't welcome on Mother's Day, I just smiled and walked away quietly. And then I canceled her mortgage payment. The desert air in Scottsdale, even in early May, carries a certain weight, a promise of the sweltering heat to come. I've always found it comforting. It's solid, predictable. I was sitting on my covered patio watching a family of quail skitter across the flagstones, the hum of the pool filter a familiar white noise. At 58, my life was supposed to be about this kind of quiet predictability. After my husband Robert passed away 5 years ago, my world, once bustling and full of property closings and client meetings, had shrunk. It didn't implode, it just condensed, focusing into a single brilliant point of light: my daughter, Ashley. Ashley is my only child, my everything. My 28 years of motherhood have been the single most defining role of my life. After Robert was gone, my sole mission became ensuring she would never have to worry. I'd done well for myself as a real estate broker. I wasn't just good, I was one of the best in the valley. I knew the market inside and out, and I'd invested wisely. All of that hard work, all those years of late nights and tough negotiations, were for her. To build a foundation for her that was unshakable. That foundation took its most tangible form in a beautiful 4-bedroom new build in Gilbert. I can still remember the day we first saw the model home. Ashley's eyes lit up. But then, that familiar flicker of anxiety crossed her face. The price tags in the Phoenix metro area are no joke, especially for a young couple. She and her husband Mark were just starting out. He was in tech, and she was a graphic designer. Good jobs, but not the kind that let you waltz into a $600,000 house without a care in the world. Standing in that display kitchen, with its gleaming quartz countertops and untouched stainless steel appliances, I saw my chance to give her the ultimate gift. Not just a house, but peace of mind. A legacy from me and from the father she missed so dearly. "Don't you worry about a thing, sweetie," I'd told her, pulling her into a hug. "Consider it handled." And I handled it. I didn't just put down a massive 30% down payment to avoid PMI. I made an arrangement, a private, simple arrangement. The mortgage would be in their names for credit building purposes, but the payment, every single cent of the $2,800 monthly payment, was a scheduled transfer from my account to theirs on the 25th of every month. It was my joy. It was my way of knowing that no matter what happened in the world, my little girl had a safe, beautiful roof over her head. She called it the magic money, and we'd laugh. In my mind, it was the purest expression of my love, which is why the phone call felt like a physical blow. It was a Tuesday, exactly 1 week before Mother's Day. I was feeling particularly cheerful. I had already made reservations for our annual tradition, brunch at the Terrace at the Biltmore. We'd been going there for years, ever since she was old enough to appreciate fancy orange juice. I dialed her number, the phone feeling light and happy in my hand. "Hey, sweetie," I chirped when she picked up. "You'll never guess where I managed to get a noon reservation for Sunday." The line was quiet for a beat too long. "Oh, hi, Mom." Her voice was flat, distant. I could hear Mark murmuring something in the background but couldn't make it out. All the sunshine seemed to dim a little. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my own voice losing its buoyant edge. "You sound tired." Another pause. This one was heavier, filled with a tension I could feel right through the phone. I heard a muffled whisper, a sigh, and then Ashley's voice came back sounding rehearsed, formal. It wasn't my daughter's voice. "Actually, Mom," she began, and my stomach twisted into a knot. "Mark and I have been talking, and, well, we feel it's important to start our own traditions now that we're a family." The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the thumping of my own heart in my ears. A family? What did she think we were? What had we been all these years? I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "We think it would be best," she continued, her voice wavering just enough to betray her discomfort, "if you didn't come this year." If you didn't come this year. The words hung in the air, sharp and cruel. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a clean cut, deliberate and deep. Years of birthday parties, scraped knees, graduation ceremonies, and wedding planning. All of it culminating in being uninvited from the one day that celebrated our bond. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to demand an explanation, to ask her what I'd done to deserve this. But I didn't. A lifetime of professional composure, of holding my own in rooms full of sharks, kicked in. My pride, stubborn and fierce, formed a shield around my shattered heart. I would not beg, I would not let her hear me break. I took a slow, steadying breath. "I understand," I said, my voice shockingly calm. It sounded like it belonged to someone else, a stranger. "Mom, she started, but I cut her off. "No, it's all right, Ashley, I get it. You're building a life together, that's good." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. "I'll let you go, talk to you later." I ended the call before she could say another word and let the phone slip from my hand onto the cushioned seat beside me. For a moment, I just sat there, frozen, staring at the cheerful, sun-drenched yard that suddenly felt like a movie set. I could feel the mask of calm on my face begin to tremble. Then, a single hot tear escaped and trailed down my cheek. Then another. I didn't make a sound, just let the silent, gut-wrenching pain wash over me. She didn't want me. My gift, my support, my very presence, it wasn't wanted. And then, something inside me shifted. The deep, agonizing hurt began to cool, to harden. It was a chemical reaction, transforming a liquid grief into something solid and sharp. Resolve. The words echoed in my head again. Start our own traditions, our own family. They wanted to be their own independent family unit, did they? They wanted to be adults, free from the shadow of dear old mom. An image of the beautiful house in Gilbert flashed in my mind. The symbol of my love, the symbol of my support, the symbol of my control? Is that how they saw it? A cold clarity washed over me. You can't have it both ways. You can't declare your independence while cashing the checks of the person you're pushing away. Slowly, deliberately, I reached for my phone. My hand was perfectly steady now. I unlocked it, my thumb swiping past the family photos on my home screen without a flicker of emotion. I opened my banking app, the little icon, a familiar sight. My fingers moved with autopilot precision. Payments, scheduled payments. And there it was, the lifeline I had so lovingly extended. The transaction scheduled for May 25th. *** recipient, Ashley and Mark Thompson. *** amount, $2,800. *** memo, house payment. My finger hovered over the screen, directly over the small, unassuming button that read, Cancel Payment. The finality of it was absolute. This wasn't just about money. This was about the statement they had made, and this was my response. They wanted to start their own traditions as their own family. Fine. A core tradition of every family is paying for their own roof. I took one last, deep breath, the desert air feeling different now, cleaner, sharper. Then, with a firm, decisive press, I touched the screen. A confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled payment?" I didn't hesitate for a second. I pressed confirm. The silence in my Scottsdale home after Mother's Day was a living thing. It was heavier than the dry Arizona heat, a constant, humming reminder of the empty space Ashley had carved out of my life. For a week and a half, I went through the motions. I tended to my desert rose garden, the brilliant pink blooms a stark contrast to the grayness I felt inside. I swam laps in my pool, the cool water doing little to extinguish the slow burn of anger that had replaced the initial shock and hurt. I told myself I was fine. I told myself I had done the right thing. But every time my phone buzzed, my heart would leap with a pathetic, desperate hope, only to crash when it was just an email notification or a text from a friend. Then, on a Tuesday morning, it happened. My phone rang and Ashley's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 3 times, my hand hovering over the device, forcing myself to take a steadying breath before answering. "Hi, honey," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Mom!" The word was a cannonball of panic. It wasn't the distant, cool tone from our last call. This was raw, unfiltered fear. "Mom, something's wrong. The mortgage payment, it was returned. The bank just called. They said it was never sent, and now they're hitting us with late fees. Did you forget to transfer the money or something?" An ugly, bitter little smile touched my lips. She thought I'd forgotten. As if the single largest financial transaction I made every month, the one that kept a roof over her head, could just slip my mind. I took a sip of my iced tea, letting the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. No, Ashley, I didn't forget. There was a pause. I could hear her sharp intake of breath.
What? What do you mean you didn't forget? Mom, this is serious. They're talking about reporting it on our credit.
I'm sure it is serious, I said calmly, but as I recall, you and Mark made it very clear that you wanted to be independent. You wanted to start your own traditions as your own family unit. I'm simply respecting your decision. A family unit is responsible for its own home. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, the dawning horror as she realized this wasn't an oversight. This was a consequence. You can't be serious, she stammered. You're cutting us off? Over brunch? This isn't about brunch, Ashley, and you know it, I said, my voice hardening. It's about being told that after everything I've done for you, my presence in your life is something to be tolerated, or in this case, completely excluded. You wanted to be adults. This is what being an adult looks like. I heard some shuffling and a muffled, urgent whisper. Then, a man's voice, smooth as silk, came on the line. Mark. Susan, it's Mark. Hey, listen, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding here. His tone was all charm and reasonableness, the one he'd used to win me over in the beginning. Ashley has just been under a lot of stress at work. She's terrible with words sometimes. You know how she gets. She would never, ever want you to feel unwelcome. Of course, we want you in our lives. We love you. It was a masterful performance. He didn't apologize. He made excuses for Ashley, painting her as a flustered, emotional woman and himself as the calm, rational man trying to clean up her mess. But the word he used, Susan, not Mom, was a dead giveaway. It was a subtle way of keeping me at arm's length, a business associate, not family. There's no misunderstanding, Mark, I replied, my voice like ice. I heard what she said, and I'm taking her at her word. Actions have consequences. He tried again, his charming act starting to fray at the edges. Come on, Susan, let's not blow this out of proportion. We're family. A late mortgage payment isn't going to help anything. Let's just fix this and we can all move past it. I've already fixed it on my end, I said. The rest is up to you two. And with that, I hung up. The call left a foul taste in my mouth. It wasn't just Ashley's ungratefulness anymore. It was Mark's slick, condescending attempt to manage me, to smooth over the gaping wound with empty platitudes. The nagging little suspicions I'd harbored about him, the ones I'd dismissed as a mother being overprotective, came roaring back to life. Why was Mark the one trying to fix this? Why was Ashley so panicked? A late mortgage payment is a problem, sure, but for a successful tech guy with a recent promotion, it shouldn't be a full-blown four-alarm fire. Something was very wrong. The next day, I started making quiet inquiries. I called a mutual friend, Brenda, whose son used to work at the same tech company as Mark. We chatted for a while, catching up on gossip and talking about the weather. Then, as casually as I could, I steered the conversation. It's so great to hear that Mark is doing so well at Omnicorp, I said. Ashley mentioned he got a big promotion to a fully remote position a few months back. He must be loving the freedom. Brenda's laugh crackled over the phone. A promotion? Honey, where did you hear that? My Tim told me Mark was part of that big round of layoffs 3 months ago. He said Mark's whole department was eliminated. I'm so sorry. I figured you knew. My blood ran cold. Laid off, not promoted. For 3 months, he had been pretending to go to work, pretending to be successful, lying to everyone, including my daughter. The red flag wasn't just a flag anymore. It was a screaming, flashing neon sign. My career as a real estate broker in the Valley meant I had connections. I knew people in title companies, in legal firms, in financial services. That afternoon, I made a call to an old contact, a man who owed me a significant favor. I hated doing it, but this was my daughter's life. "Frank," I said, "I need some discreet information. It's about my son-in-law, Mark Thompson." What he found was worse than I could have imagined. Mark didn't just have a few missteps. He had a long, documented history of failed startups, each one a little more sketchy than the last. He'd left a trail of burned business partners and unpaid vendors across 3 states. His financial situation wasn't just messy, it was a full-blown catastrophe. He owed a staggering amount of money to all sorts of people and businesses. He wasn't just swimming in debt, he was drowning in it. I felt sick to my stomach. He had married my Ashley, put her in a beautiful home I was paying for, and all the while he was a financial wreck playing the part of a successful husband. I had to tell her. I called and texted for 2 days straight, but she ignored me. Finally, I left a voice message practically begging, "Ashley, please. We need to have lunch. It's important. It's about your future." She finally agreed to meet at a sterile little cafe in Chandler, halfway between our homes. She walked in looking pale and defensive, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She didn't even say hello. I laid it out for her as gently as I could. I didn't lead with accusations. I started with questions. "Honey, Brenda told me Mark was laid off a few months ago. Is everything okay?" Ashley's eyes darted away. "It was a restructuring. His new position is a consultancy role. It's complicated." "Ashley," I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a summary of what my contact had found, a list of failed ventures and outstanding financial obligations. I'd blacked out the specific numbers, wanting to spare her the shock, but the pattern was undeniable. "He hasn't been honest with you." She glanced at the paper for less than a second before pushing it back toward me, her face hardening into a mask of pure fury. It was a look I'd never seen from her before. "I can't believe you," she hissed, her voice low and shaking. "You went behind my back? You're investigating my husband? This is what you do, Mom. This is what you've always done." I was stunned into silence. Her words were laced with a venom that wasn't her own. I could hear Mark in every syllable. "You're just jealous of my happiness," she continued, her voice rising. "You've never had a happy marriage, so you can't stand to see me have one. You're trying to sabotage it, trying to drive a wedge between us because you're miserable and alone." Each word was a physical blow, but the final sentence was the one that truly shattered me. "You've always used your money to control me, and now that I'm finally happy and independent, you can't handle it." The gaslighting was absolute. She was twisting my love, my generosity, my desperate attempt to protect her into a weapon against me. It was a script, written by Mark and performed by my own daughter. He had coached her, turning her against the one person who truly had her back. I sat there, looking at the furious stranger across the table, and my last ounce of hurt evaporated, replaced by cold, hard resolve. This was no longer a misunderstanding with an ungrateful child. I was in a war with a manipulative predator for my daughter's soul, and I was done playing defense. 2 months crawled by, each day heavier and quieter than the last. The silence from Ashley wasn't just an absence of sound. It was a physical weight in my Scottsdale home. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would leap with a foolish hope, only to crash when I saw it was just a news alert or a message from a friend. I had created a chasm between us, a clean, sharp break I'd initiated with the press of a button. And while a part of me, the proud and wounded part, knew it was necessary, the mother in me was in constant, agonizing pain. I knew from the bank that 2 mortgage payments had now been missed. The formal letters I'd once set up on autopay were now likely landing with a thud in their mailbox in Gilbert. I imagined the slick, professional envelopes being opened, the cold, black and white print spelling out their new reality. The bank's warnings would be escalating. I pictured Mark's smooth reassurances to Ashley, the same charm he'd used on me, now twisted into a tool to manage her panic. I knew he was coaching her, feeding her lines about my controlling nature, poisoning the well of our entire history together.
And the worst part? It was working. Then, one Thursday evening, it happened. The sun had just bled out behind the McDowell Mountains, leaving the sky a bruised purple. I was in my kitchen, staring blankly into the refrigerator, when the doorbell chimed. The sound shot through the house like a bullet. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart hammered against my ribs as I walked to the front door, my hand hesitating on the brass handle. I peered through the peephole. It was Ashley. My breath caught in my throat. She was just a ghostly figure under the warm glow of the porch light, her shoulders slumped, her face obscured by a curtain of her own hair. I pulled the door open, a dozen questions dying on my lips.
She looked up, and the sight of her face shattered me. It was blotchy, ravaged by tears. Her eyes, usually so full of life and light, were hollowed-out pools of despair. She wasn't the confident, defiant young woman who had accused me of jealousy over lunch. This was a child lost and broken. "Mom," she whispered, her voice a raw, broken thing, and then she just collapsed. Her legs gave out and she folded forward into my arms, her body racked with deep, gut-wrenching sobs. I held her tight, kicking the door shut behind us as I steered her trembling form into the living room. She was clinging to me like she was drowning, burying her face in my shoulder, her tears soaking through my shirt. The official notice had come. The one with the terrifying words "Notice of Foreclosure" in bold lettering. It had been taped to their front door that afternoon. "We're going to lose the house, Mom," she cried, her words muffled against my chest. "We're going to lose everything. I've been so stupid."
Oh God, I'm so sorry. I led her to the kitchen and sat her down at the island, the same place where I'd made 100 family breakfasts, where she'd done her homework as a little girl. Her confession came out in a torrent, a flood of shame and truth held back for too long. Mark had lost his tech job months ago, right before he'd started pushing me away. The promotion to a remote position was a complete lie. All those months while I thought he was working from his home office, he was just sinking them deeper and deeper into a financial hole. He told me his new startup just needed a little more capital, she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. He kept saying the big payout was right around the corner, but the bills, Mom, the bills just kept piling up. There was so much spending for business expenses, he said. Then came the hardest part. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "He's the one who said we should cut you off. He said you were a toxic money tap, that you used your support to control me." She couldn't even look at me. "He said if we created a crisis, if we made you feel guilty enough for hurting me on Mother's Day, you'd panic. You'd beg to fix things. He told me you'd write a huge check to save us, a big lump sum, enough to solve everything." My blood ran cold. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it was breathtaking. He was going to use that money to clear up his own messes, she choked out, the final, ugliest truth finally escaping. "He has other obligations, things I didn't know about. I found some papers. He never intended to save the house, Mom. He was going to take the money and leave. He was going to leave me." Tears streamed down her face again. "He never loved me. He told me that tonight. He said he loved my lifestyle. He loved my mother's bank account." Just as the confession hung in the air between us, heavy and sickening, a pair of headlights sliced through the dark, sweeping across the kitchen window and bathing the room in a sudden, harsh white light. We both froze. A car door slammed shut outside with a violent crack. Heavy, angry footsteps thudded up the stone walkway to my front door. Before I could even stand up, the front door burst open. It was Mark. His face, usually a mask of easygoing charm, was twisted into a snarl of pure fury. His eyes zeroed in on Ashley, then flicked to me, burning with hate. He had tracked her phone. "There you are," he bellowed at Ashley, his voice echoing in the quiet house. "What are you doing? You think running back to Mommy is going to solve anything?" He took a step into the room, his whole body radiating rage. The mask was not just off. It had been shattered into a million pieces. "This is your fault," he screamed, turning his venom directly on me. His finger was pointed at my face, trembling with rage. "This was all going according to plan until you decided to play hardball. You were supposed to panic and write us a check, you meddling old woman. You were supposed to come crawling back, begging to save your precious daughter's house.
You ruined everything." He stood there, panting, his chest heaving, and in that one, vile, explosive tirade, he confirmed every single word Ashley had just sobbed to me at my kitchen table. She stared at him, her tear-filled eyes wide with a final, horrifying clarity. The man she had married, the man she had defended, the man for whom she had thrown her own mother away, was gone. In his place stood this monster, a stranger whose only love was for a future that I had, thankfully, refused to finance. The universe seemed to hold its breath in the deafening silence that followed Mark's car screeching away from my curb. The front door was still ajar, letting in the cool Scottsdale night air, thick with the scent of jasmine from my neighbor's yard. Mark's ugly words still hung in the air like poison gas. "You were supposed to panic and write us a check, you old hag." In that moment, watching his retreating taillights disappear down the block, I felt the last lingering wisps of grief for my broken relationship with Ashley evaporate. They were replaced by something else, something fierce and molten. It was the primal, instinctual fire of a mother whose cub had just been threatened by a predator. I turned from the door, my movements calm and deliberate. The mask of a politely wounded widow was gone for good. Ashley was still standing in the middle of my living room, her body trembling, her face a pale, tear-streaked mask of horror. She had just seen the real monster, the one I had suspected but she had adored. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a terror that went beyond the screaming match. It was the dawning realization of the abyss she'd been living on the edge of. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. Then, as if a puppet with its strings cut, her legs gave out. I moved faster than I had in years, crossing the room just in time to catch her before she hit the floor. She wasn't just crying anymore. She was shuddering with deep, gut-wrenching sobs of shame and fear. I held her, stroking her hair, the same way I had when she was a little girl who'd fallen off her bike. I guided her to the couch, wrapped my favorite quilt around her shoulders, and just held on. "I'm so sorry," she choked out against my shoulder, the words muffled by the fabric. "I'm so sorry." "Shh," I murmured, rocking her gently. "We'll figure this out. I'm here. We'll figure this out together." We sat like that for a long time, the silence broken only by her ragged breaths. There would be time for more apologies later, time to dissect the betrayal. Right now what she needed wasn't an "I told you so." She needed a safe harbor. Eventually, the sobs subsided into exhausted hiccups. She pulled back, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "The house, Mom," she said, her voice thin and reedy. "The bank. They sent the official notice. We're going to lose it." I nodded slowly. The lioness was still there, but now she was calculating. "Okay," I said, my voice steady. "Okay. The first thing we do tomorrow morning is deal with that. I'll make some calls." I promised her I'd help, and I meant it. I thought it would be a simple, albeit expensive matter of talking to the bank, paying the arrears and any penalties, and getting things back on track. I thought the worst was over. I was so wrong. The next day I brought Ashley with me to the office of David Chen, my longtime financial advisor. David is a sharp, no-nonsense man in his late 40s whose office is a temple of calm, with minimalist furniture and a single perfect orchid on his desk. I explained the situation, the missed payments, my son-in-law's deception, the impending repossession of the house. I asked him what the quickest way was to make the bank whole. David listened patiently, his hands steepled under his chin. He had me log into my accounts to give him access to the necessary information, and then he started typing. Ashley sat beside me, twisting a loose thread on the quilt I'd insisted she bring with her. She looked like a child, small and fragile in the big leather chair. The silence in the office stretched on. The only sound was the quiet, rhythmic tapping of David's keyboard. After what felt like an eternity, he stopped typing. He took off his glasses, polished them slowly, and looked at us with an expression I couldn't quite read. It was a mixture of pity and professional gravity. "Susan," he began, his voice gentle but firm, "this is more complicated than a few missed payments." "What do you mean?" I asked, a fresh knot of dread tightening in my stomach. "We just need to pay what's owed, right? "It's not just about what's owed on the house," he said, turning his monitor so we could see it. He pointed to a series of dated entries and digital signatures. "Mark didn't just convince Ashley to cut you off. He spent the last 6 months using her as a co-signer and personal guarantor on a number of his business ventures." My blood ran cold. "What kind of ventures?" David sighed. "From what I can see here, they were high-risk, speculative arrangements. Things he was funding. He used Ashley's good financial standing and her identity to secure a number of private funding agreements. They weren't from traditional banks, but from private firms that deal in this kind of high-stakes world. The fine print on these agreements is punitive." He clicked through several documents, each one bearing Ashley's flawlessly forged digital signature. Ashley stared at the screen, her face ashen. I remember him having me sign a few things on his tablet," she whispered. "He said it was just paperwork for his new remote promotion. Standard corporate stuff." "It wasn't," David said softly. "He was making her financially liable for his gambles. And now that those ventures have failed and the money is gone, the backers are coming to collect. The house is only the first piece of the puzzle." He paused, then delivered the final blow. "Beyond the mortgage, these other commitments that he signed in Ashley's name, they total over $80,000. $80,000. The number hung in the sterile air of the office, obscene and impossible. It wasn't a hole, it was a canyon. This wasn't a case of a lazy son-in-law wanting a free ride. This was a calculated, systematic financial demolition. He had been strapping dynamite to the foundations of her life, piece by piece, all while smiling and telling her he loved her. I looked at my daughter, who was staring at the number on the screen as if it were a death sentence. The relief I'd felt just the night before, thinking we had reached the bottom, was a bitter illusion. We hadn't hit bottom. We had just discovered that the ground we were standing on was nothing but a flimsy sheet of ice, and it was cracking all around us. By pulling that one thread, by canceling that single mortgage payment, I hadn't just exposed a lie. I had triggered a collapse that threatened to swallow my daughter whole. 6 months can feel like a lifetime, or just the blink of an eye. In our case, it was both. The blistering Arizona summer had softened into the mild, golden days of late fall. The world outside my window looked different, and the world inside my heart felt like it had been completely remade. The house in Gilbert, that beautiful brand-new build with the perfect lawn and the open-concept kitchen I'd been so proud of, it's gone. After we uncovered the full extent of Mark's financial deceptions, the risky ventures he'd tied Ashley's name to, the binding partnership agreements he'd signed that were draining their accounts dry, we were faced with a brutal reality. The ownership plan with the developers was ironclad. A few missed payments and they had the right to start the process of reclaiming the property. Going down that road would have left a permanent black mark on Ashley's financial record, a stain that would follow her for years, making it nearly impossible for her to ever stand on her own 2 feet again. The decision was agonizing, a final, bitter pill to swallow. But it was the only way to walk away clean. We sold the house. We sold it quickly, at a loss, just to sever the final tie to that chapter of her life and satisfy the terms of the agreement before it did any more damage. It was like watching a ship I'd built with my own hands sink beneath the waves, but I knew that on that ship was a man who had tried to take my daughter down with him. Sometimes you have to let the ship sink to save the passenger. Ashley now lives in a cozy but small 2-bedroom apartment in Tempe. It's in one of those endless beige stucco complexes with a shared pool that's always a little too crowded on weekends. Instead of the quiet hum of a suburban cul-de-sac, she hears the distant sound of traffic from the freeway. Her kitchen has laminate countertops, not the quartz I picked out, and the appliances are standard white, not gleaming stainless steel. And you know what? She's never been happier. She got an entry-level job in the marketing department of a local company. It doesn't pay much, but she's learning and she's good at it. On weekends, instead of going to brunch in Scottsdale, she works a second job at a little boutique downtown, folding sweaters and helping women find the perfect dress.
She's tired most of the time, but it's the good kind of tired. It's the exhaustion that comes from building something of your own. A couple of nights a week, she comes over, or I'll go to her place. I bring groceries, and she puts on a pot of coffee. My favorite moments are when I see her at her small dining table, her laptop open, its soft glow illuminating her focused expression. On the screen is a spreadsheet she built herself. It has columns for rent, utilities, groceries, gas, and a tiny one for savings. Watching my daughter meticulously track every dollar she earns, seeing the pride on her face when she manages to move another $50 into her savings column, that's a legacy. That, right there, is 1,000 times more valuable than the down payment I once made. I was teaching her financial literacy, yes, but what she was really learning was self-reliance. Fast forward again. It's a Sunday in May. The scent of roasted chicken and rosemary fills my kitchen. Outside, the Palo Verde trees are in full, brilliant yellow bloom. A year. It's been exactly 1 year since the phone call that broke my heart. Ashley stands beside me at the counter, chopping vegetables for a salad. We're laughing about something silly, a story from her job, a memory from her childhood. The sound is so easy, so light. There's no strain, no hidden agendas, no sense of obligation. Our relationship, which had become a complicated transaction, was now simple. It was just a mother and a daughter enjoying a Sunday together. The ghost of Mark, of his manipulation and entitlement, was long gone. We'd talked it all through, cried all the tears, and emerged on the other side, stronger and more honest than ever before. After we finish eating, clearing the plates together in a comfortable silence, Ashley gets a little quiet. "Hey, Mom," she says, biting her lip. I have something for you." She pulls a simple, unadorned envelope from her purse. My heart does a little flip-flop. She hands it to me, her eyes watching me anxiously. It's just a plain card, the kind you buy in a pack of 10 at Target. I slide my finger under the flap and pull out the folded cardstock. I open it. Her familiar, rounded handwriting fills the inside. There are only a few sentences. "Mom, thank you for canceling the mortgage payment. It was the best Mother's Day gift you ever gave me. You didn't just save me from a house, you saved me." My throat tightens. I look up at her and my vision is blurry with tears. But these aren't the silent, burning tears of hurt I cried a year ago. These are tears of overwhelming gratitude and love. She rushes forward and wraps her arms around me, holding me tight. I hold her back, burying my face in her hair, which smells like her shampoo and the afternoon sun. In that moment, holding my daughter, I finally understood. A mother's greatest act of love isn't always to provide a safety net. Sometimes, it's having the courage to take the net away. It's about allowing your child to fall, even when it tears you apart to watch, because you know it's the only way they'll ever learn how to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and stand tall on their own 2 feet. Canceling that payment was the hardest thing I'd ever done, and she was right. It was the best gift I ever gave her. It was the gift of herself.